This show's been brought to you by Anarchy Wear. They are a great organization who sells clothing, banners like what's behind me, hats, all kinds of stuff. And they're absolutely amazing. Not only do they put out awesome content, they also make awesome things like this. And if you're a Spooner fan, you have this. Let me stand up. I didn't sign shit. Lysander Spooner. If you're a Spooner fan, you'll totally understand. If you're not a Spooner fan, get in my DMs and I'll let you know, because he's one of the greatest to ever do it. This flag behind me, enemy of the state. Man, that's Murray Rothbard, the greatest to ever do it. I'm a Rothbardian. He is my favorite economist. He is my favorite anarchist, libertarian, whatever you want to call him. Fantastic material that he's put out. I highly recommend you read his books, but Anarchy Wear has everything from bold to cute and modest. You know what I mean? So like, check them out at Anarchy Wear on X, aka Twitter, at anarchywear.ca on anything meta, being Facebook and or Instagram. They're awesome. I love those guys. They're doing great things, and I highly recommend you follow them and get some goods from them, man. I love everything I have from these guys, and they're amazing. And let me throw this in for you. If you use promo code BudsNReality, Buds, letter N, reality. I know you know how to spell. If you're watching this show, you're pretty smart. I know you are. Anyways, get at them, get yourself some gear. And if you use the promo code BudsNReality, you will get yourself 15% off. Who doesn't like a deal? So get at them, check them out. They are great, awesome people. Thank you for the sponsor, and let's get on with the show. Welcome to the BudsNReality Show. I'm Sean Collins, your favorite anarchist, and we got Ben DeJong back in the house. Even though, Ben, you're always going to be Ben DeJong. I'm sorry, dude. That's how Leah introduced us, and so that's just one of the things. But man, I'm glad to have you back. How are you?
Thanks. I respond to both. It was always fun. Like even growing up, I got that. Thankfully, on the west side of the state, there's enough Dutch people where people see the J and pronounce it as Y. So I haven't run into it nearly as much. But yeah, you go to the east side of the state, it's Ben DeJong. So I'll never take offense to that.
Well, it's funny because like Leah will always say it in a funny way. She'll be like, Ben DeJong.
Yeah, I think she just likes to push it a little bit. I mean, not that I've ever kind of, dug her for that for any reason, but yeah, it's pretty funny. She sees the J and it's always a hard J.
Hi, Leah. We had to throw her name out there. I've actually known her since like middle school. So this is, it's funny to run across her, 20 years or more after high school at a libertarian, function. And all of a sudden I hear my name and I'm like, who's calling me? You know what I mean?
Who knows me here?
Like, what is happening here?
Clearly, it was divine that I was supposed to be here, because people are already calling my name and I haven't even met anyone.
And I really hadn't met anyone, because Ryan Brennan, who was the one who actually invited me to my first LP Wayne County meeting, and it was through Twitter. I didn't even know what he looked like or anything, nothing. His picture was not him. So I'm like, who am I looking for? I'm like, is this guy here? I'm
Rarely
like,
his name is him, so I'm not surprised that there's no picture associated.
well, this was last, early last year or whatever. It's been a while. So it's really funny. It's funny how things all work out and how life is, and how small the world really gets. But thank you for doing this. You are my emergency guest. We had a cancellation, and let me apologize to you guys right now if I suck. I actually have the flu, and I'm doing this sick as fuck with my hot toddy, but we're doing it. And but let's dig in. There's a lot going on in the world, and a lot of people are asking questions. And one of the major questions within Americans is, what the hell is happening to our money, and where the hell is it going? And now I have a couple of, I have one story here for sure that Disclosed.tv reported. Actually, it's been a couple weeks now since they reported this. I haven't had a chance to really get into it. 40,000 weapons worth over $1 billion+ that was sent to Ukraine have not been properly tracked, Pentagon report concludes.
Yeah, this is a perfect interjection for Dave Smith quote. You want to know who our enemies are for tomorrow? Look who we're funding today. So you better believe those fucking neo-Nazis in the Ukraine, not even neo, they are Nazis. Those Nazis in
Yes.
Ukraine have basements full of our weapons. And you know what? As soon as we try to, start muddling with Ukraine, they're going to turn on us and going to be the next terrorist that we're going to have to deal with.
Oh, well, this is textbook shit, and I talked about this months ago on one of the shows where, like, the people we're helping out now, we will be at war with within 10 years. See Iraq. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it happens every time.
Every
Iraq,
single time.
Afghanistan,
So
Pakistan.
we help these people, and then all of a sudden we turn around and we bomb the shit out of them. And we know exactly why. We know exactly why. And it's because it keeps the money train printing. It keeps that printer going burr, you know what I'm saying? And it never stops. But I mean, let me get your take on this, because like there's nothing new under the sun, man. The Pentagon's always losing fucking money.
The segue to that is on funny enough, I just listened to Judge Knapp today, and I can't remember who his guest was, but they were talking about the fact that, we're bombing Yemen again. Now we're bombing them directly instead of just funding and supplying all the bombs to Saudi Arabia to do it. And they were kind of like going back and forth because they're like, well, why are we even doing this? And they played a clip of a reporter asking Biden, like, what's the purpose of this? And is this going to stop the attacks in the Red Sea? And Biden fully admitted, no, this is not going to stop the attacks in the Red Sea, but we're going to continue to do it. And so Judge Knapp and this other guy went back and forth, like, why are we doing it? And I'm like, we're doing it to fund the military industrial complex. They would bomb. I'd rather them just drop bombs in the ocean if they need to, buy more bombs, if it's, because it really comes down to money. They just have a supply and they need to get rid of it. So we buy more. I'd rather them bomb the ocean than people, but people it is. And we're always doing it to the third world countries. I was thinking about that today too, is like, the whole like anti-bullying, and bullying is bad, especially in schools. It's like, don't bully, don't bully. And then you look at the United States and what do? We bomb third world countries to make the other bigger countries afraid of us and follow whatever dictates we throw out there. And it's not, we never pick on somebody our own size. It's always some third world country that's got oil, or who's saying no, or is talking to the wrong people. Next thing you know, we're bombing them. And it's like, it's such a bully coward move. And we've been doing it, since World War II.
Well, the fact of the matter is that, we were funding the genocide of Yemen. Okay. And a lot of people, well, you don't know anything about that. And you don't know anything about that war and why people were there, why we were funding that, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I know exactly why they were doing that. And it's because we were told that they were housing terrorists, right? That was the ultimate, bullshit line that we got, that they're housing terrorists. Okay.
Ever since 9/11, that's been the excuse for everything.
Okay, well, if they're housing terrorists, number one, why aren't you just going after? Why are you bombing the shit out of an entire country with innocent civilians that don't deserve any of this, nor do they want that? And number two, what the fuck are you even doing? Like, Yemen is a blip in the map, dude. Like, Yemen is nothing. Like you said, they're a third world country. They don't have any money. They don't have any assets. They're not a threat to anyone, right? And you're going to bring these superpowers over there with all the big guns and artillery and Air Force, and you're just going to go there and level them. And now, I got into a little Twitter, thing. I don't want to call it a beef. It wasn't a beef. It was a debate, because the guy was like, Yemen fucked around and they found out. And I was like, what did they fuck around and find out about? He goes, well, they shouldn't be bombing boats. And I said, well, why do you think they're bombing boats, dude? I was like, it's blowback. He's like, no, what they're getting is blowback from bombing boats. I said, actually, if we weren't over there for years and years and years bombing the shit out of them for no reason at all, just to back the Saudis because they're our homeboys, because they have a bunch of oil. You know, Biden and the Saudi prince jerk each other off. Oh yeah, I just said that out loud. That's what's happening. This is the exact thing that's happening right now. And
well, not to mention what, you know, Israel's doing in Gaza and the West Bank. I just saw, or they just talked about this today, that there was a 17-year-old American shot in the back of the head by the IDF in the West Bank, and not reported anywhere. You know, it's, even though Americans are now being killed by the IDF, innocent children basically, and of course where they're good, there's going to be blowback. I mean, that's their kindred spirits. That's, you know, that's, honestly, I wish there were more countries over there that were willing to stand up for genocide, because they talk a lot, but they don't do anything. And I don't know, you know, I think everybody has that red line, and it will be interesting to see if, you know, that some of these countries like Turkey and like Iran, like, is there a red line there where, you know, because they're blowing up. They were just talking about, this was an old, I think it was a college building that the IDF had been occupying in Gaza, and then they decided to leave the building, and then they blew up the building. So they're clearly just trying to destroy and make it unlivable in Gaza, and there's a reason for that. They want the river to the sea, and like, it's just amazing that, you know, even now, Elon Musk is out touring Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro, paying his, you know, reparations for saying something that somebody took as anti-Semitic, and he is just kissing the ring. And this is the richest man in the world, and he's kissing the Zionist ring. So, you know, you've got Vivek, you've got RFK, you, like, every political entity out there just bows to, you know, the Zionists. And it's like, what, you kind of start to wonder, like, what do they have that is so powerful that the richest man in the world bows to it?
well, I mean, you know, I think I have the answer to that, because now you're starting to see commercials on TV about it, about all this oil that's in Israel. They're like, drill in Israel. You know, I'm seeing live commercials on the TV about, you know, there's all this oil in Israel. And I'm like, well, there's your answer right there. There is your answer. Anywhere there's oil. Here's the thing. The Greek, my boy, the Greek, Mr. George Marakis, man. I love that man with my whole heart. Seriously, he's a homeboy of mine. Someday I'll have him on the show. He's very wise. But something he told me during the Obama administration years ago, when we worked together at an Olive Garden, we were waiting tables, and I was bitching about Obama about something, and he's like, hey man, always follow the money. You follow the money and you will get every answer you ever need to know about politics. And guess what? He's not wrong. He's 100% on point. So maybe the love for Israel comes from oil, or just I
mean, religion plays into it.
Religion does play into it, because we are a Christian country, and the Bible speaks of Israel and the Israelites as God's chosen people. And as a Christian, I understand that. Okay,
Old Testament.
but God's chosen people are not the IDF. Okay, God's chosen people are citizens. God doesn't want you worshiping governments and shit like that. Trust me, you are supposed to worship Him and only Him. Now, the fact of the matter is, our relationship with Israel is beyond inappropriate. We treat them like they're the 51st state. Shit.
Well, we treat them like the federal government. Like
they can do no wrong. We give them billions and billions of dollars every year. And only like $3.8 billion a year is what's reported. That's what's reported. You know, you could probably rest assured it's much more than that, you know.
And you know, a lot of that goes back to their super PACs who fund, you know, government.
And also we give them weapons constantly. They're our guinea pigs. Israel is our guinea pigs for our military weapons. You know, we build this shit, we make this shit, and we're like, hey, go try this out.
And for our drug companies.
Or that. But then they go, then they use it and they go bomb Gaza. You know what I mean? Are they, you know, Israel is the United States goons for the Middle East. That's the relationship. You know, the United States wants to be this world power, You know, that's their thing, because all this war shit has nothing to do with American freedom and or liberty. You know, we could go on that for days and days and hours, you know, but it's about complete domination of the world. These people have something the United States wants, they're going to take it. And so they have allies like Israel, and we give them all the money and weapons to make, because we can't be there all the time, even though we have like what, almost 200, no, more than 200 military bases, like 800. How many military bases are out there? 900?
980, which
Yeah,
means
some
that
crazy
probably well
200.
over
Where did I get
1,000.
200? Oh, I'm sorry. 200 bases are just surrounding Iran, somewhere around there. I'm sorry. I got that a little wrong. We have like 900 and some odd bases, you know, throughout that area. That just goes to show that it's not about anything but colonization and domination.
Yeah, I think I don't remember who said it, but he said every time you hear we need to protect American interests, you need to hear or think we need to protect the American empire. And I think once you start, and I don't remember if this was which podcast it was, but it was like once you start applying that, you know, when you say we need to spread democracy and protect American interests, and what you need to do is translate into protect the empire, further the empire. Then all of a sudden, all of this stuff starts to make sense, because if that is your goal, is protecting the empire, then you need to bomb anybody and everybody who is pushing back against the empire. I mean, it boggles my mind that people, I don't know, for with Americans, if it's just complacency. I think we're just fat and happy, and we've never really been tested like a lot of countries over in Europe and Asia, and we don't know what real inflation looks like. We don't know what losing, you know, a quarter of our population like Russia did in World War II. We don't understand what real pain is. And so when we see that pain overseas or on TV or on Twitter, I think Americans just like, you know, it's just same old, same old. We've been hearing about this since 9/11. We just don't care. And until Americans feel pain, that's the only time they're going to start to care about this kind of stuff. And I think that kind of scares me too, because who knows what that pain could look like.
Well, I mean, the pain is coming, and you know, and so I just did a show last week with Michael White, and we were talking about how the mainstream media is lying and telling everybody that everything's fine and things are great, right? And there's all this job growth and the stock market's great, blah blah blah. Which the stock market just had a blowout. Like they just had a great you know day recently, and things were up and everybody was celebrating. But I remember something, you know, around 2008 time where the same thing happened too, you know. And I think that was, you know, that was just all the rich people cashing in before the, you know, the actual bottom fell out. You know, this is all a rerun from back then. We're watching
Yeah.
time.
I don't know if you've ever seen Heresy Financial, but he's a kind of a younger, I don't know if he's really come right out and said I'm a libertarian, but I think one of his last videos on YouTube, he basically said the same thing. This is a mirror of what happened right before the collapse in 2008, and the rich bid everything up, and then they know when to get out, and then all of a sudden you get a crash, and then the suckers start buying into the crash. And so that's kind of how the money moves from the middle class and the poor to the rich.
And they're doing it again. It's literally happening in real time. And for the people that are, you know, that are unfamiliar with how things work or whatever, they're like, yeah, everything's great. I even got friends who are like, man, the stock market, man, they just had a great, you know, this great day. The things are up. Everything's fine. But then you see things like this that Pete St. Onge actually reported. And I don't know if anybody's following Peter St. Onge. You should be. The guy is a financial genius. He knows his shit, and I really appreciate what he's doing out there. But he reported that the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve reports in 2023 a loss of $114 billion.
And you know who pays for that? Because the Federal Reserve doesn't take a loss.
Oh, well, let's talk about that. Who pays for that, Ben DeJong? Who pays for that?
Yep, that goes
Holy
right
shit.
into our debt bucket.
So the Federal Reserve loses $114 billion and it's not their problem. They don't care. You know, they report this shit and they're like, yeah, whatever, because the taxpayers are going to come. That's every time. The taxpayers have to pick up the slack.
And if there's anybody out there, and I really hope there isn't, that doesn't know that the Federal Reserve is a private bank who runs our banking industry and who is in charge of our monetary system, it's a private bank. There is no more federal about the Federal Reserve than Federal Express.
Oh, let's talk about, and another thing, where's your money going, America? Where you want to know where your money's going? Do you know how much power the Federal Reserve has? They literally open businesses that they lend money, they print money and lend to in order to keep this going.
To buy government debt.
This is a fact. They literally have the power to open up businesses to take money that is printed and then turn around and tax you for it.
Buy US, well, they turn around and buy US treasuries and government bonds just to keep the market up from crashing. So now, it's all a house of sand.
And the funny thing is, it's funny you bring up the bonds. The bonds are about to be worth nothing.
Yeah, anybody listening, please go into your 403Bs or 401Ks, your retirement accounts. You need to, I mean, everybody out there needs to look at where your money is, because the default in retirement accounts, the default purchases is government debt. So they're actually using your retirement money to buy unfunded liabilities. These are liabilities. These are not assets. These are liabilities. And they're using your money, your retirement, to prop up the government. At the same time, they're inflating the money. So you're getting taxed through inflation, and they're stealing it from your retirement. So most retirements out there will give you some amount of control, but you need to go in and talk to your retirement account or go into your web host, whoever is hosting your retirement, and look for retirement funds that have actual assets. And that's not easy to find. Like my retirement, I had to go through some weird portal to get access to go through Schwab to actually start buying actual assets to be in my retirement, because all the retirement account options I had were debt-based retirement. It was almost all at least a 50% weighted with government bonds and treasuries. And that's debt. Like, that's not, you can't retire on someone else's debt. And that the fact that that's even allowed just shows you what kind of a Ponzi scheme that our system is.
Well, it's evil. It's not even a Ponzi scheme. It's straight up evil. They're literally robbing people blind and taking them for everything that they're worth. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to, a lot of people say, Sean, you sound like an alarmist. You get on these shows and you're trying to rile people up. No, I do this out of love. I truly do this out of love. Like, I want people to understand exactly how things work so they can prepare themselves for things that are coming, or get themselves out of a situation that can be very bad. You talk about people's retirement funds and shit. Please go talk to somebody from the 2008 era that lost.
I was just going to say
that lost everything. These people saved their entire lives. They're fucking, 30, 40 years, whatever it may be, they were putting it into their 401ks or rolling into whatever bonds and stocks and shit they had. And when shit went belly up, they got stuck with nothing, literally nothing. They lost everything.
Yeah, I had over $40,000 in my retirement account, and it was gone. And that wasn't necessarily enough to wake me up, because it just, from listening and hearing, and it's like, oh, well, everybody lost everything, so it's not a big deal, you'll get it back, blah blah blah. But you're not getting it back. Well, to your point, that the people that are in their 50s and 60s who are like, I'm 5 years from retirement, they can't afford to lose everything. And the thing is that the system has set them up to lose everything. That is what the system has set you up for. And ironic enough, I hit a deer on Christmas. So that was Daddy killing a reindeer.
Nice.
And so I had to go out and get a new car. And I mean, that's not something I had budgeted for. So I called up my retirement account. In a previous position, you could borrow against the account interest free, and then you would just pay that loan back right through your paycheck. And so I'm like, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take out this loan from my retirement account. And they said, oh, I'm sorry, that option was removed, so you're not able to. So I said, all right, so what about a hardship withdrawal? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for a hardship withdrawal. Or no, he said you could withdraw $400.
Hold up, man. So they're telling you you can't take out your own fucking
You
money.
can't take the money. It's not your money
That's
anymore.
your money.
Not until you have to quit your job to have access to it.
I hate this. I hate our system with a fucking passion. Listen to that. Did you say that again out loud? Because that's fucking crazy.
The government dictates how you can withdraw that money, and it has to meet a certain
not that
threshold.
money, their own money. They dictate how you can.
Your money, right? They dictate when and how you can withdraw that money and what percentage you can withdraw. So I have well over 40K in my retirement, and I was only able to take $400 out. And I didn't even meet the threshold because you basically have to lose your house. So totaling a car didn't meet the threshold. So that's the kind of stuff where it's like, what is it? The Great Taking, I think I sent you.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. All of a sudden,
Michael White on the last show. That, whoo boy.
All of a sudden, when I got the deny, I'm like, oh, this is right along and in line with the Great Taking. Like, it's not your money. And now it's clearly not your money. And so the day all of a sudden your account's zero and you're like, what happened? They're like, oh no, that's, Schwab's money. You were just a custodian, but when push comes to shove, if they need it, they can take it legally. Well, obviously I can't even take it now, but because it's there for Schwab, it's not there for me.
That is completely crazy.
And that's not just my money. Like most companies match your retirement. So they're not only stealing it from you, they're stealing it from your business that you work for or the company you work for. So it's the fact that it's a setup. I mean, it's only a matter of time before that my retirement account is zero. So, after reading in The Great Taking, I was like, I don't feel bad about taking the money out of my retirement. I read, well, it's a PDF. Yeah.
Okay.
And all of a sudden when they were like, you can't even borrow against it and you can't withdraw the money. And I'm like, oh my word, this is just another proof that the Great Taking is legitimate. And it's if you can get, I stopped funding my retirement account, and that's money I know I'm never going to get back. So what's the point? And that's scary, but you can take that money you do lose the match from your employer, which sucks, but you could take that money and put it into actual assets and fund your own retirement, which is kind of what you're supposed to do. I mean, the government kind of pushed everybody into an employee funded retirement with matching because they want the money themselves. And so that puts all of that money, obviously. So that's something that everybody needs to look at your retirement accounts, look at where the money is allocated, find out, is there a way that you can move it into accounts that actually hold assets? But better yet, read The Great Taking, watch the Great Taking video, and decide for yourself. Maybe you don't want to even add to your retirement account, and maybe you want to fund your own retirement. And I think you're going to be better off if you do that. That's future-proof 100%.
I think taking care of your own finances is the only way. It's, you can't leave your future and or your finances up to banks and or government. Because they go hand in hand. The government controls all that shit. Well, actually, I'm sorry. That's a lie. I need to take that back. The banks control all the shit and the government will just do whatever the fuck they say. I talked about this with Lars Mapstead. The pecking order, central banks, they run it all. They are the puppet masters. They run everything, all of it. I'm telling you, they run it all.
And then government, that's the enablers.
Well, no, they're third on the list though. they're third. Then it's the puppets are, big pharma, oil, military, industrial complex, corporations. They're the puppets. And then the governments are the goons. They're the ones who do all the fucking dirty work.
Well, they're the ones in front of the camera. Like they're like the industrial complexes and the banks, you never see them at a press briefing, but they control the script.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, what do you do from there? How do you take care of yourself? And the only thing I can say is stop putting money into retirement funds. It's not going to be there for you. Unfortunately, you're stuck paying Social Security through taxation. It's bullshit.
Which is not going to be there for you either.
Oh, Social Security's not. People like us are not.
So guess what's funding Social Security? Government bonds and treasuries. Like that is
which are going to hell right now. The government bonds are shitting out right now.
Once that goes, Social Security goes. And so it's government debt I never realized how pervasive it was. I always thought it was other countries that bought our debt and the Federal Reserve that bought our debt. I never realized how much debt that our banks are buying, our retirements are buying. They're just trying to shove that debt anywhere and everywhere so they can keep printing money. And I'm starting to think that they know
by print.
Well, I think that they're starting to realize that the house of cards is going to fall, and it's going to fall fast. And so you can see the spending has just really exploded at the federal level. Like,
yes.
I don't know how many people look at the My Debt Clock, and it's on hyper speed. I mean, I think we're spending almost 3 trillion a year is being added to our debt. And it's funny to hear some people say, well, that's just debt that we owe to ourselves. And it's like, no, it's not. It's debt that we owe to US companies like the big pharma, like the military industrial complex, but they're going to want that money. It's not debt that we can just write off. It's debt somebody has to be paid on.
Well, David Webb talked about it in the documentary. I haven't read the book, but in that doc, in The Great Taking, he straight up says this is controlled demolition because they know that they printed into oblivion. There's no getting out of it. The interest alone, we're not getting out of it. You can't even, we don't bring enough in the US economy to pay off the yearly interest on a $34 trillion. This is where we're at as a country right now, And so now what they're doing is, and he called it a controlled demolition, which I totally believe it is. I've been saying they've been doing this shit on purpose for the past 3 years. I'm like, there's no other reason that they would do this other than that's what they want to do. And this is to finally roll out the CBDC. They're going to do it to the point to where they say, okay, we made a mistake. We don't have any more money. We can't print any more money. So what we're going to do is
a great reset.
Yes. And we are going to give you this central bank digital currency, but you can only use it for certain things. And if you don't behave yourself and make like people like me, oh shit, they take all my money, dude. Are you kidding me? Or you see me on Twitter or Facebook every day? They would destroy me. They take my house.
Well, they don't. I mean, there's always this fear of this social credit system that China's put out, but a CBDC it's built in. Like the social credit system's built into a CBDC because they have full control over every dime you spend, whether you can spend it or what you can spend it on. So if that's the case, then even though I work for healthcare industry, I'm getting paid in money that the government owns and controls. So I'm basically working for the government. Right. And that's communism and fascism in a joint monster that is totalitarianism on steroids. And it's not that necessarily like communism, everybody worked for the government. In this system that we're approaching, everybody's going to work for, that government and that, military industrial complex, big pharma, that conglomerate. I mean, it's fascism, but communism at the same time. I mean, it's like the worst of both. And people don't understand what kind of a fiscal cliff and kind of the fact that, your freedoms could be gone overnight. Your everything, like talk about invasion of privacy. If they know every cent you
They're
spend.
gonna know what you're buying, dude. If you go buy porn from the gas station, they're gonna know. If you go buy, cigarettes from whatever you're buying, they're gonna know exactly what it is. But here's the crazy thing that David Webb pointed out in that doc. Now we're already taxed to no end, right? There's an Oliver Anthony thing. We're taxed to no end. And we're already inflated through the fucking roof, dude. And the more they print, the worse it gets. But then you roll out the CBDC, and you run your taxation with your. I'm so jealous of that beer. I'm sitting here drinking hot toddies. Woo! But sorry, I just got a clove in my mouth. Yes, you put real cloves in your hot toddies, guys. But anyways, you're taxed, you're inflated, but then every time you go to use your CBDC, you have to pay a fee to use it.
That's potential too.
There's the potential for that.
They have full control. It's programmable money, and people don't. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you saw this, but so Vivek, I don't know if this was on Twitter or if it was a statement, but he had said that he had talked to Trump about CBDCs and about the dangers, and he said, I don't like I like to talk about like policy, right? And the next day, Trump gets up at a stump speech in New Hampshire, and he goes, "Have you guys heard about this CBDC thing?" And the whole crowd's like, applauding. He goes, "Oh, you guys are smart people." Like, he had just been informed on what that was.
How are you running for president not knowing what the fuck is going on around you? Are you kidding me?
Because he's all ego and he's all talk. He's a hot bag of air. But the fact that you have a Vivek that's like talking in his ear and saying, like, no, you don't need to reform the FBI or the CIA. You need to abolish them.
Down. Yeah.
And if that combo can get to the White House, which I don't think is going to happen, because I'm pretty sure they'll stop Trump in some manner or another.
Democrats aren't letting him win. There's
no it's not going to happen.
Trump win, which you know what?
But the worst thing is now Vivek's off the ticket. Now it's Haley. So if they're able to get Trump, Haley's the default Republican nominee. And so you've got Haley and Biden, which is both owned by the deep state. So,
dude, she's owned by Lockheed Martin. She's owned by Boeing. She's owned by all the military.
Basically the Pentagon.
Don't get me fucking started on that bitch, okay?
Oh, she is the worst thing I've ever seen.
That woman is evil, and you want to know what? She is not a Republican. Being a former neoconservative Republican, that woman is not a Republican. That woman is a Democrat.
I've heard that
100%.
In the was it the Ohio wasn't it Ohio or Iowa. So she finished third, but rumor has it, and again I don't have facts to back this up, but there was a shit ton of registered Democrats that registered as Republicans to vote for her. So there was a huge movement to try to get because I don't think there are some sects of the Republican Party, the old school neocons that are for her, but thankfully the vast majority have picked Trump. And as much as I can't stand his I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of his views on the whole Israel Palestine thing. I think his past has kind of proven the fact that he's in the pocket of the Zionists, with his moving the embassy and touting that as a big thing.
I got pictures of him, with the thing on his head, putting his hand on the wall and shit. You can miss me with all that. He will bow down to Israel like the rest of them do. He will.
Yeah. I'd still take that over.
I don't want to call it a hat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd take that. If he's going to bow down to Israel, that's one thing. But like a Joe Biden, who's basically in every potential war that we can get into, he's like, let's do it. I'll take a Trump over that. Like a Nikki Haley. Like a Nikki Haley would be Biden 2.0. That she just would continue exactly what Biden's been doing.
I personally,
potentially
Haley would be worse than Biden.
I could see her like trying to start a war with China or Russia.
She loves war, but like we said, she's got
what makes her money.
Yeah, We all know when she was the U.S. ambassador, she was a hawk, you know? And the whole, you know, people will be like, well, Trump never started any wars, but he escalated Yemen, he escalated Syria. I mean, Scott Horton talked about it in his book, Enough Already, where, you know, he said that Trump did not want to escalate the wars, but the neocons got in his ear and wouldn't shut the fuck up, and so he caved. So it makes it feel better.
Sometimes they could blatantly disobeyed him, like when he said we're pulling out of Iraq, and they're like, no, we're not, and they just didn't do it. So I mean, there has been a few, I think, a few instances. It was Syria and Iraq, I think those were the two, where he was like, he basically commanded them to either withdraw troops totally or withdraw troops to a certain smaller number, and they never did.
Well, of course he didn't. But now we're at a point where, like, you know, the central banks are in bad shape, and they know they're in bad shape. And so all this shit and all this bombing and all this war shit isn't really a surprise, because what happens when war happens?
There's a lot of people that make money.
They're going to print, you know, and that's going to be their quote unquote way out of this. But we all know what happens with every war. What happened when we went to war with Bush? We got $4 gas, you know, we got, you know, inflated price. Everything was expensive, $4 a gallon gas, and, you know, people were dying. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this makes actually a good segue over to Davos, Sweden, with the World Economic Forum. They've always been a really good glimpse into what's going to happen next, and it's, you know, it's kind of funny because I think how many years ago was it that the theme of the World Economic Forum was "You will own nothing and be happy"? What that was like?
That's only
4 years ago, 3 years ago.
It couldn't have been that long ago, because Carol Roth, you know, dropped her book "You Will Own Nothing" last year, and that was very WEF heavy, you know, and ESGs and stuff. I had her on the show right after she dropped that book. One of my favorite shows I've ever done, actually.
That's somebody I could probably talk to for hours and hours and hours.
If you're not,
I'm sorry, but I don't have any more spit in my mouth. We're gonna have to stop this episode.
I could have talked to her forever. We had such a great time, and she actually thanked me after the show for, you know, such a laid back, you know, chill interview or whatever, because everything's so serious with people all the time, and I try to have a good time with this as much as possible. So that was very cool. But like, you guys, if you're not following Carol Roth and listening to what she has to say, you're doing it wrong. That's all I'm saying. But you know, she goes hard on the WEF, and, you know, she spoke of, you know, how Klaus Schwab would say we need to penetrate the cabinet. You know, we need to penetrate the cabinets, which they have done. The WEF has infiltrated every government in the entire world. They got WEF puppets. We have WEF puppets in our government now. Pretty much all of them are at this point. You know, which, in my personal opinion, any U.S. politician that has ever had any inkling to do with the WEF needs to be removed from their seat and arrested and charged with treason of the highest regard immediately.
Yeah, they're actively acting against the interest of the United States.
Because, listen, Davos, they just had Davos, right? Dude, Klaus Schwab's out there. The guy's a fucking lunatic, for fuck's sake, man. Klaus Schwab, if something bad happened to him, I would laugh.
You couldn't have created a more perfect Bond villain, especially when he wore that like black outfit with the shoulder pads and the medallion, like Bond villain from space. It's right. I mean, and all he talks about is taking over the world and getting people to comply. And I'm like, where is James Bond to shoot this motherfucker in the head? Because
seriously,
it's disgusting. Like, and people like are, oh, is it like applauding the greatest Bond villain ever? Like, what planet are we on?
This lunatic is literally on this stage at Davos talking about how they want to implant chips in people's brains to control their goddamn thoughts.
Are you serious? I didn't see.
Dude, there's videos. I saw the video on Twitter, dude. It's there.
Oh shit!
Like, well, there's no secret that they want us, you know, chip tracked and eaten up. That's their thing, dude. And not only were they saying shit like that, which, by the way, Soros' son was out there and is extremely intimidated by Donald Trump. He flat out said it. He flat out said, you know, everything, you know, not verbatim, but everything was everything until Trump came around, is pretty much what he said. And I'm like, you know, but seriously, you got Klaus Schwab talking about inserting chips in people's brains to control their thoughts or read their thoughts, right? And then you got other people, like most of those people in the WEF have flat out said that we have too much freedom.
Oh, there was a clip going around that Schwab was talking about libertarianism was the enemy of society.
He says because we want to destroy things. Fuck yeah, we want to destroy shit, dude.
Government. We want to destroy government. I think it was specifically around government. And yes. he was right. Like, well, that's what was funny, because he wasn't even like lying or making up shit about libertarianism. He said that they, you know, that they're against the state, and you're like, fuck yeah, we're against the state.
Hell yeah, we are, dude. Like this is no secret, dude. And I remember tweeting about that a while back. I'm like, we made our point. Now it's time to make them afraid. And they are afraid. They're shook. They showed that at this Davos this last time around. They are shook right now because people are starting to revolt. And even the people that were, you know, kind of on their side are like, wait a minute, man. You know, these people are out of their minds. And the fact of the matter is, and I said this earlier, the central banks control everything. BlackRock they are I can't remember the guy's name. The CEO of BlackRock is the whole brains behind the W.
Jamie Dimon, or is that Chase?
I can't remember.
He's Chase.
Yeah, no, fuck. I don't know. Look it up, you guys. Whoever the CEO of BlackRock is, that is who the WEF is. So when I say that the central banks run everything, they run everything. They're running the globalists right now. They're telling you that they want to put chips in your brain. They want to they think you have too much freedom. Are you kidding me? We have too much freedom. We don't have enough freedom right now. We're fucking slaves, all of us.
And God bless Javier Milei for going up there and having the balls to say what he did. I was
not a half-hour speech. It just him to shred.
I remember when I first read that he was going to Davos, and I'm like, no. It's like he was totally bullshit, and he was, you know,
libertarians were having a fit. Oh, look at this mother.
And he turned it around, and I was like, oh my word, I was up on my hands, applauding with a heart on.
The look on those fucking WEF bastards' face was fucking
oh, it's the most beautiful thing I've seen since the, you know, the liberal tears when Trump won. Like, I mean, it was just, you know, when he beat Hillary. Like, it was just beautiful because he was clear, he was concise. I don't think any libertarian could have made a better speech at a den of thieves like the WEF.
Dude, if you guys get a chance and can handle the subtitles, because he spoke it all in Spanish.
There is apparently a video where it's translated in or dubbed in real time in English. I haven't seen it yet, but I listened to a podcast where they were like that it does exist. So yeah, if I can find that, I'll definitely post it on Twitter.
They looked so defeated after he did that, and it was just like I just clapped. I was like, man,
because he'll never be invited back.
You know, I didn't get on social media and talk shit or whatever about it, but I was like, I'm like, oh man, he went there. Are you kidding me? Don't do this to us. That would make us look really, really bad. But no, he made us look really, really good and totally destroyed their agenda.
The only thing better is if he would have ripped open his shirt and it would have been a big "Don't tread on me" snake in like a t-shirt.
No way, a tattoo of the
would have been fucking flag. Cool.
A tattoo of the, oh yeah. What up, anarchy? Fuck the state. Woo! Anyways, no, if he big old tattoo of the ANCAP flag, oh my God. Like, you guys need to see that. But seriously, this isn't a game. Oh, and by the way, you guys, do you know that millions and if you want to know where else your money's going, millions and millions of dollars go to the WEF. Millions and millions of dollars go to the
not
WEF.
Even to get into the WHO. I mean,
Every
between
year.
the WHO and the WEF, like that's the duopoly of evil right there. I mean, I don't know. Have you heard? Because there was a talk around that a lot of countries were signing this new law that basically gives the WHO emergency powers for any pandemic.
Yes.
Do you know, was that passed in the United States, or is that Was
I
it passed
can't,
by executive order?
I
I've
can't,
not heard anything on
I
that.
don't know. And I remember hearing about that because people were freaking out about that, but I don't have the answer to that right now. So I can't really, get into that, but it
Yeah, I'm
was,
gonna have to look into that because I mean, talk about giving up everything. Because so I think Russell Brand says if you make pandemics profitable, you're gonna guarantee more pandemics.
absolutely.
And
Look what
I
just
think
happened.
we've proven that right.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But let's do something fun right now because I found a video. It was an old video of G. Edward Griffin. And this is the 7 reasons why the Federal Reserve should be abolished. So let's have some fun with this. Number 1, it's incapable of accomplishing its stated objectives. Now, what are the stated objectives of the Federal Reserve? Well, we don't know.
Well, originally it was stable prices, and then the Congress added
Yes.
unemployment. No unemployment. I don't remember what the measurement was, but it was something to do with unemployment. So those are the 2 objectives of the Federal Reserve, which, to his point, they have very little, if no, control over.
Well, they were supposed to what's the word I'm looking for?
Stabilize the economy, or
Stabilize
stabilize
the
the monetary
economy.
system.
Yes, pretty much stabilize the monetary system. That's their objective.
And we had the Great Depression almost, what, 10, not even 10
Not
years
even 10 years later, man.
after it was introduced.
Which is hilarious. So
Isn't
that
that
alone,
crazy? Like, if I was alive at that time and I'm like, you just introduced this bank that is supposed to prevent depressions or busts, and you just introduced it and it busts, then you need to revoke it. Like, that's a complete, like, sometimes I think that's almost a little bit of a white pill. The more you understand, you see history, the more you realize it's bad now, but it's been bad for a long time. And so, it's not like it's hellscape today. It's been a shit show for a while. I mean, when we defaulted on the dollar in 73 and divorced the gold standard,
which
like,
is hold that thought, which is hilarious. Because do you remember, was it last year or the year before when they're like, the United States has never defaulted ever in the history? Bullshit. You just said it.
yeah, it's a massive default because we promised the world after World War II, we'll take all of your gold for safekeeping, but don't worry, because if you hold dollars, you can always get your gold back.
Lies.
So we robbed the fucking world.
They did it. They did it. So that's number 1. And by the way, for you guys who don't know who G. Edward Griffin is, he wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is the most amazing book on the Federal Reserve ever written in the history. And if you're not reading it, you need to get your ass to it. And if it's a long book. If you're audio, do it because it's like a 28-hour audio thing too. It's a long ass book. Let's get to number 2. Number 2. It is a cartel operating against public interest.
It's literally the definition of a cartel.
Yes,
and it basically, for those who don't know, a cartel is basically a sanctioned monopoly. I mean, maybe you have a better definition, but that's
no,
what
that
jumped
pretty
to
much
mind.
hits it, which is left unchecked. You got to add that. It is they are left unchecked. Nobody can do anything to them unless you kill them, like straight up. That's how that would work. The only way to get rid of a cartel is to end it, like end it. Number 3, it is the supreme instrument of usury. Now, what
And usury is it's probably a little bit more of an old world language, but it's what's a good replacement for usury? Abuse, right? It's overindulgence.
the abuse of power, pretty much.
Yeah, I would say overindulgence and abuse is usury, and that's what we've seen. I mean, it's interesting because the whole 1913 to 1973 That's what
Well,
was it?
71 is when Nixon took us.
71.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70. I mean, for some reason it was always, so what is it? 60 years basically, where we had a central bank, but they were tethered.
Well, yeah, because we were stuck under the gold standard, which at that point, like when we were under the gold standard, the government wasn't allowed to borrow beyond their means, which is why they axed it.
Well, and then in that time period, they revalued gold multiple times so they could print more.
Yes.
So, because I think it was like $30 an ounce, or it's probably even less than that, and then they revalued it to like 60 some an ounce, so they could, so they could print more. And then they stole all the gold, and then revalued it again.
The problem was when they did that was because they couldn't keep up with the
printing.
The printing. They couldn't keep up with it. So they're like, okay, we have to get rid of this gold standard. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. We can only scam this. We can only pull this scam for so long. So if we axe this all together, that opens the floodgates to, we can print all the goddamn money we want, and it doesn't matter because we know that you're going to pay for it.
And I don't remember who I was listening to, but they were alive at that time. And I remember him saying that when Nixon made that announcement, he was like, holy shit, everything's going to implode tomorrow. And again, when Nixon made the announcement, it was a temporary suspension of the gold standard. And I think it was Ronald Reagan. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
That's right.
And so he was expecting everything to implode the next day, and the stock market made new highs. And he was like, what the fuck? I'm putting those words in his mouth, but that's, I'm sure, what he was thinking. Because
everybody's like, thinking, what the fuck?
you just reneged on your promises to the world.
That's right. Now let's do number 4. It generates our most unfair tax, which is inflation.
And which is crazy, because the Federal Reserve has been saying, well, originally 2% was the ceiling. So we needed to keep inflation under 2%. And then somewhere, I think in the 80s or 90s, they were like, 2% is the target. We need inflation, right? Because without inflation, people won't spend their money. They'll hoard their money, and we can't have that.
Got to move the goalposts, man.
It's the Keynesians like that. You can start seeing them like infiltrate things, and like now all of a sudden 2% was the target. And then I think it was 2 years ago, right when inflation started to tick off, I remember Jerome Powell saying, well, a little more inflation's okay, because 2% should be the average.
Right.
So we've had less than 2% for the last couple of years. So we can have more than 2%, and it's going to be okay, because that's so now the 2% is an average. So before it was a ceiling, then it was a target. Now it's an average. Yep. Like you can just see them move that goalpost.
Do you want a live example? You
highway
guys,
robbery.
The inflation that we got, what was that, in 2021? When gas prices were over $5
official, it was 9%.
It was like 13%, dude. It got fucking crazy, man. So that just proves our point right there. And what happened before that? Trump fucking printed $7.8 trillion in 4 years. And then Biden came in and said, hey, man, hold my beer. Hold my beer. We got this under control, you guys. And the next thing you know, Americans are like, Jesus Christ, gas is $5 a gallon. And eggs is fucking $8 a carton. And what the hell's going on here? Everybody's asking the same thing. What the hell happened here? This show is sponsored by Infinite Zeal Syndicate. You can follow him on Twitter @_Infinite Zeal. He is a great liberty-minded fella that just wants to share the message of liberty, and also has fantastic merch like this hat I'm wearing right now. You see me wear it on every show. He's a great gentleman, and I highly suggest you give him a follow, because he's one of the good ones, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get on with the show.
Everybody needs to go.
Fucking money.
Everybody needs to go check out shadowstats.com. So Shadowstats basically takes, so one of my big things that work is like process improvement. And so we're very focused on data. And data consistency sometimes is even more important than the data sources themselves. You have to be consistent. If you're going to measure something across time, you need to be measuring the same thing across time. So the way the Federal Reserve, I mean, this is just ridiculous that they're measuring inflation because they're the ones causing it. So of course, it's baked in the cake that they're going to lie, but they have changed the definition of inflation and what they measure as inflation over time as inflation continues to get worse. So originally they were measuring steak. Well, all of a sudden, steak got so expensive that people were eating ground beef. And so they said, well, people are eating ground beef. So we're not going to measure steak anymore. We're going to measure ground beef. And so that's how they justify the changes in inflation because, well, people are buying something cheaper. So let's measure that. Well, why are they buying something cheaper, you fuckers? Because you're making the original thing too expensive for them. And so people need to understand the inflation numbers that are published are bullshit. So go check out Shadow Stats. So what Shadow Stats does is it takes that basket of goods that inflation was originally measured in, and they take that same and they expand it across time, which is the way you're supposed to measure data, is to be consistent. So if you don't know about Shadow Stats, check out Shadow Stats.
That's right. I like that. Thank you for that. And so now we're at number 5. Now 4 through 7 are big for me. Like the first 3 are kind of like, okay, a lot of people don't understand that. The last 4 are huge for me. And we just talked about the inflation. Now we're talking about number 5. It encourages war, which is huge. And we just kind of talked about it. The Federal Reserve on top, it's not just the Fed. We're talking the Fed. We're talking the Fed matters because the Fed is here. But it's not just the Fed. It's the IMF, World Bank. It is BlackRock.
International Monetary Fund. Yeah.
They literally fund both sides of every war. This has been happening since the beginning. This is a fact. You guys can look it up. It's not hard to find. This is how it goes. And this is why we are constantly, it's no secret that we've been at war since the start of the Federal Reserve. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and it kept going, it kept spiraling. And then all of a sudden you got Iraq, Iran, and it's not just the wars that we're in. They're literally funding these wars that we are not in, but they're all proxy because we pay for them.
I think a lot of times, like the IMF will approach, and I think Gaddafi in Libya was a good example of this. They said, hey, we have a loan offering for you. It's a deal you can't refuse. And so he took it because he's like, oh yeah, that's great. All of a sudden he said, yeah, I'm not paying this back. Guess who gets invaded?
Right.
Libya. So we're basically, the U.S. military is the goons of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And not only that, is I think in 2008, I remember Ron Paul, somehow he got some bill passed to find out how much money was sent outside of the United States for bailouts. And I think at that point it was like $4 trillion went to the World Bank of US money. And I remember being like, whoa, what in the world? Why are we bailing out the US Bank or the US Monetary Fund? And that was an eye opener. It was like, well, obviously our central bank is just a puppet in the whole world order of the banking system. And when the world order banking system, takes a dip, we're paying for it. They don't take losses. None of these banks take losses. They do not take losses.
They will never take a loss.
Right.
Which, what will fix this? Free market capitalism, ladies and gentlemen. That will fix this. And I know capitalism is such a bad word in the eyes of the left. Oh, it's the capitalist fault. And it's capitalism. It's capitalism. It's capitalism. Listen here, folks. The United States has never seen capitalism ever. Not true capitalism. They've never seen it. It's never happened here in our entire lives. Not even in the entirety of our country since 1776 has it seen real, true free market capitalism. Because true free market capitalism, there's failure. Businesses fail, companies fail, banks fail. There ain't no bailouts. It's just part of the way it goes. You lose, you lose. That's just what it
Well,
is.
it's the difference between centralization and decentralization, because
Yeah.
failure is going to happen. But would you rather it happen in Ionia County or in the entire United States? Because decentralization means the failure is small and it's localized.
Yes.
Centralization failure means everybody pays. And
Yes.
so that's where people need to understand the difference between true capitalism, which is 100% decentralized. That is me and John Doe, and I want to buy something from him, and he wants something from me. We decide on the medium of exchange. We decide on the arrangements. We both sign a contract. That's capitalism. And I think we did experience that in probably the beginning of the United States into, I mean, I definitely the nail on the head was the Federal Reserve Act. I mean, but at least before the Federal Reserve Act, you had a local bank, you had a local currency that you could transact in. I mean, Lincoln really damaged it, during the Civil War, having local currencies. But
Right.
that at least says, hey, I live in Michigan. Michigan has this, the Michigan currency. It's used by these banks. Maybe these other banks use gold, or maybe these other banks use the federal currency, but you had options. Like, I work for an employer, I pick how I want to be paid, and they pay me in that means, whether that's a currency or that's actual money, gold and silver. But that's, you had that option. And now obviously we don't have that option, and they've been stealing from us ever since.
Well, but here's the thing that a lot of people don't know that they talk about in Creature. The Fed is actually the United States' fourth central bank. This
Yep.
ain't the first one. And so you got to think, and what happened, the funny thing is what happened to the other three? Well, the same thing that's happening now, you guys.
We had men of honor that said fuck that, and they canceled their contracts, because before that
was it Andrew Jackson? He got rid of two central banks, I believe. He got rid of those. Andrew Jackson was based, dude.
Yeah, Hamilton was a big proponent of the first central bank, which Jefferson nixed. And then Andrew Jackson had a central bank under him. I don't remember the president before that started it. But so before the Federal Reserve, each central bank it was basically a contract. So there was an expiration date, and that had to be renewed. And so we had presidents that were brave enough to say, no, we're not renewing that.
Because they were doing the same shit they're doing now. This is, and the fall of Rome. Like I talk about this a lot. Why did Rome fall? Endless
money,
endless printing of money. That's exactly why Rome fell. Nothing else. And
every empire.
Right now, the United States is Rome, and we're on our way out, you guys. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to be an alarmist. I do this out of love. But let's move on to number 6. It destabilizes the economy. No shit. Look at us, dude. This is a mess.
Booms and busts. I think everybody's ever they've heard those terms. They've heard bubbles, right? Those are all because of the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
And or zombie companies. I'm sure that people have heard that term. Well, how does a zombie company work? Well, they lose money, but the only way they're staying in business is they get money for next to no interest. And so they can stay afloat even though they're losing money. So they're a non-profitable company that are pretending to be a profitable company. I think like WeWork, like they went bust recently. There's a lot of these zombie companies in the economy, and who's funding them? The Federal Reserve.
Of course they are, because they fund everything and they run it all. Number 7, which is huge. This is a big one. It is an instrument of totalitarianism.
It definitely funds it.
It definitely funds it. It is. We are in the middle of a I can't even say
totalitarianistic or totalitarianism.
Say
you
that
kind of
10 times fast. I'm sick.
You have to dry your mouth out.
I'm sorry. I got the flu. That's my excuse. But you know what, dude? We're watching it in real time. This is happening, dude. The takeover is happening. And so we have a choice to either shut the fuck up and say nothing and just take it, or we stand up for ourselves and do what we need to do to tell them no. That's it.
Something that I had never quite like connect the dots. You hear about war bonds back in World War I and World War II, that the US government was selling war bonds to
I
raise
do
money
remember
for the
that.
war.
Well, I don't remember that. I remember hearing about that.
And I didn't really make that connection, but it was, I remember where I heard it, but they were saying the reason for that is because the dollar was tied to gold, the government actually had to ask the citizenry to fund wars,
Yeah.
because they could not just free print, that there was a tether. And so they could only print up to X. And if you hit X, now you had to sell war bonds. And so the only way to go to war was to get US citizens to pay for it directly.
Right.
And I mean, part of me is pretty shocked about World War I and World War II. But then you also look at like what they did to get us into those wars to try to drum up support, because I think there was polling before both of those wars, and the vast majority of Americans said, stay the fuck out. We do not want to die overseas for a war that does not jeopardize our sovereignty. And it took the sinking of the Lusitania, it took Pearl Harbor to move the people into supporting it, because the government knew they were going to have to ask the American people to pay for it directly. And so they needed to drum up direct support. And we don't have that tie to holding government accountable anymore, because they can spend and print as much as they want. The only tie we have anymore is whether they're going to get reelected. So
Right.
there is still a little bit of an accountability there. The financial accountability is gone.
Oh,
But there is I mean, there's a lot of bad things to say about democracy. And I mean, it's a horrible form of government. I mean, the founding fathers preached about democracy is a wolf fighting between who's going to be for dinner. But at least we have some accountability at this point. I don't know how much is left in reality. Now that we're prison or trying to throw opposition into jail, I think democracy is gone. And funny enough, that's the excuse for throwing Trump into jail, is to save democracy.
Gang rape, dude. Like I know that's a fucked up thing to say, but that's what gang rape is.
It's 51%.
It's mob rule, man. But how can you call well, they don't even call us a republic anymore.
No.
But
which is good, because we're not.
Well, like they have changed the meanings of so many words, like throughout the years. Like
capitalism. Capitalism is the rich stealing from the poor. That's what they think capitalism, or they say capitalism is.
My favorite is liberal. My favorite word that has been stolen is liberal, because these liberals that are here now, they are not liberal at all. Liberals were for, I don't even know how to explain. They were for other ideas.
Personal freedom.
Personal freedom, no matter, what you were about. They were for personal freedom, which is, what?
It was kind of like, it was the fuck the man. And, it was the 1970s, the hippies. Like, you're not going to tell me how to live or who to love or what to smoke.
Like, think about this. The liberals in the 60s are today's Democrats. Or, I'm sorry, Republicans. My bad. The liberals from the 60s are today's Republicans. Straight up.
Or the Republicans and Democrats.
Or they're
libertarians. They'd want their version of a totalitarianism. I mean, I've seen some people from Michael Knowles from Ben Shapiro's network. I keep thinking The Blaze, but whatever. So Michael Knowles was on, I think it was Timcast, and he was talking about how America needs to go back to the 1950s. And he wants like anything non-American made illegal.
Like Eisenhower era?
Gay marriage is illegal. Blacks are segregated. All drugs are illegal. Right. That's kind of I think there's a lot of Republicans. It's that kind of that overreaction, which is expected, but like the libertarians are fighting against both. end goals, because liberal end goals is a full totalitarian state that makes whoever's in charge 100% in power. But the Republicans want the same thing. And that's where, like, I think we need to make a clear definition of, like, no, we want you as an individual to have 100% control and power over your life.
Because nobody knows how to control your life other than yourself. Like, nobody knows better how to do that other than you. That's, and that's a crazy concept to some people. And I'm like, well, wait a minute.
I think it's almost like a scary concept to some people, because I think for some reasons Americans are so afraid of responsibility. They want to pass the blame and the buck to someone else and claim the victim card. And you see it. I mean, Ben Shapiro's doing it right now with Israel, is like, oh, we need safe spaces for Jews in colleges. And it's like, you spent the last 10 years preaching against it. But when your protected class is in danger, you're all for it. And so the whole idea of, like, individualism and rugged, like, self-preservation, and I'm going to pull myself up from the bootstraps, and I'm going to take responsibility for my own action. That's just dead in America, it's so sad to see, because it built the country, and we've been living so decadent and so spoiled that I just think it's just died I mean, it's still alive in some areas, but in the majority of them, we're a bunch of cucks, and they vote for whatever politician is promising their version of authoritarianism. That's really what it comes down to.
Which is crazy. I look at it like this, and people look at me like I'm crazy when I say this, and you might look at me when like I'm crazy too. But, like, I feel like the Democrats are more fascist, but I feel like the Republicans are more authoritarian.
I almost look at that as like two sides of the same coin.
Well, I mean, it really is, but there's little subtle differences between the two.
Do you think the differences were kind of more obvious because of Trump?
Man,
because prior to
I hate talking about Trump, because I sound like I'm pro-Trump when I talk. And that's not the case at all. I did vote for him in 2016. I've said it 1,000 times. I'm not afraid to admit it.
But he was the guy that kind of pulled the curtain in The Wizard of Oz to show people what was behind the curtain. He didn't do anything to fix it.
No. Well, it's the same thing. Like, the guy, like, for instance, when he says the election was stolen. It was stolen. It was stolen. It was stolen. Okay, dude. That's great. It probably was stolen, to be quite honest with you. I believe that. But what are you doing to fix it? What's your plan to fix that? He doesn't have one. So he's like, okay, I've exposed XYZ, but I don't have a plan to fix XYZ, because he doesn't want to. He's got the central bankers going, hey, man, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it.
I don't know if it's a matter of want. I think he's just a fucking idiot.
Well, there's that. He's definitely a fucking idiot.
I think he watches Fox News and he just goes, well, that must be what I need to talk about. And, like, the fact, I mean, since Tucker got kicked off of Fox News is 100% in line with CNN and MSNBC. I mean, they may be serving a different.
You didn't see it.
Right. But I think Tucker was the focal point. He started pointing out contrary opinions, and, like, he was fired for it, obviously. But if you're Trump and you're basing your policy and your decision making off of Fox News, because I don't think he reads books. I don't think I think
no.
he's ego and hot air. That's
for the guy who didn't know about CBDCs that's running for president. That tells you a lot. He had to have some young whippersnapper come in here and be like, hey, man, this is what the fuck's going on. If Trump was smart, he'd pick Vivek as a VP. He would. But I don't think it really matters. I don't think they're going to let him win. One way or another, and I don't want to, it's not that I want him to win or whatever. Would I be lying if I said I wouldn't want to see, like, the left completely melt down if he fucking won? Oh my God, that would be like, you'd have podcast material forever. You know what I'm saying? But like, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. Even if he picked Vivek, I wasn't 100% behind Vivek. I liked 80% of what Vivek was talking. I liked it a lot. I
Yeah,
really
China and Mexico was it's bullshit. But
If you're
I
a hawk,
wonder
you lose me. If you're a hawk, you lose me. That's
I
it.
wonder how much those were just repeating talking points from Trump because he's trying to appeal to that audience. I think Vivek is a lot more libertarian than he's leading on. He's just trying to play the political
He used to
game.
be a libertarian. He talked about it on Sean Ryan's show. I don't know if you watch Sean Ryan at all. My buddy put
Yep.
me in or whatever, but he did talk. He had Vivek on and they talked about it. But this election could be fucking crazy because
Yeah. Because
like
if they can't stop Trump judicially, if that's even a word,
it is today.
they're going to find a way. It may be just a heart attack.
I think they're gonna kill him. Like honestly, if he gets elected, they will murder him. They will.
But isn't that crazy? The fact that he did nothing to challenge their power and authority, but he just kind of pulled back the curtain on some things, and that was enough for them to be this panicked. Because it's not like he ended. I mean, he started the path to the ending the war in Afghanistan, but like he could have done so much more. I mean, he kept Anthony Fauci and he appointed Nikki Haley. Like there is so. I mean, he fucked up royally on time after time after time, and yet
7.8 trillion in 4 years is enough.
he didn't
That's
drain
enough.
the swamp by any stretch of the imagination.
He
And yet
became
he's
the swamp.
still such a threat. That to me, that's just kind of like mind-boggling. He did nothing to reduce the money that went to the Pentagon. I mean, his
dude
only
spent more
threat
money
is to
than any
say,
president.
well, he said we're still in Syria because of the oil. He came out and actually said that. And I think that is really the only thing that the system is out to get him for, is just revealing the truth.
Well, yeah, because when he spoke out about Iraq, that changed the trajectory of how they looked at him. He was just an opponent until then. And then when he was like, well, wait a minute, they went to Iraq on false premises. There was no weapons of mass destruction. There was, pretty much everything was a lie. He called it out. He wasn't lying. And the guy also, said how he used the text thing.
The Dave Chappelle, when he was at Saturday Night Live, that was huge. When he as soon as I watched
said, hey,
that,
man. Yeah, and he said, hey, I'm using the same text codes that this person, this person, and this person, and this person does.
And I know you'll never change it because your friends are using the same loopholes that I'm using.
And that's who's lining your fucking pockets.
Like I think that's what it really came down to, is the system didn't want the truth out there. I think I wouldn't say the vast majority of Americans know the truth. They just either don't care or they just pretend it's not happening. But to have, the president, or at least, and get that case with Hillary, like a presidential candidate, actually saying it, the system itself started like shaking a little bit, going, I think that's what drives me more crazy than anything about Trump, is he called out the truth and he didn't do anything about it.
Which is like, and I have little, discussions with friends or whatever. I'll be like, well, what the hell's wrong with
I'm
Trump?
sure they've got dirt on him.
Trump? You know what I mean?
I'm sure they've got dirt on him with his like womenizing in the day. I bet you, like, because he talked about pardoning Snowden and Assange and then backed out. I know, like,
he had Assange indicted.
Judge Knapp was like talking to him, and he was fully on board with pardoning him before he left office, and he didn't.
Instead, we get Kwame Kilpatrick. Thanks, asshole.
So I honestly think they have dirt on Trump. They're basically saying we're going to destroy your legacy, because he's all ego. And so if they can say, you fuck the 16-year-old on Epstein Island, or whatever it is that they've got on
I don't
him,
think they could do that. I see. That's where I firmly believe that he was there. I don't have any receipts. I can't prove it.
yeah.
There's too many pictures of him and Jeff together to believe otherwise. Okay.
Well, just look at his like lineup of ex-wives. I mean,
but if they fucking say that he did some shit like that, you don't think he's going to bring down a whole army of people with him? They can't come out and say that. There's no fucking way. There's no way.
I think it's purely the threat, because again, Trump's all ego. So he's going to go with whatever choice that salvages his ego or endorses his ego. And I again, I do have hope that with Vivek in his ear, if he becomes VP and he turns him on and says, hey, Douglas McGregor for, Secretary of Defense, like, and Trump did have some interactions with him. Douglas McGregor, he wrote the withdrawal plan in Afghanistan. So if I think Vivek can actually push Trump into good, because Vivek's read a book and he's read a lot of books. So I think that could win. But Vivek has said over and over again, they're never going to let Trump win. That's a big gamble to say that and then to drop out of the race, because now you've guaranteed a Nikki Haley Biden election.
I think that Trump will be murdered if he gets elected as president. They will fucking kill him. I don't know what to say.
They'll find a way.
At my house for that. This is just a thought. I would never do anything like that. Don't be fucking sending the fucking Fed boys to my house. I'm not doing anything like that. But I honestly do believe that, he'd be a dead man walking at that point. He'd be a walking target. But also if he does win, they're going to burn America to the ground. America will be
and try to blame it all on Trump.
Yeah. And I don't know what to tell people, you're going to vote for who you vote for, or you're going to pick who you choose, or whatever it is. But like, this isn't a winning situation.
No, you're picking the slower of the two horses.
Like if you really honestly think that, you're going to vote your way out of this, it's not happening. And even if, hypothetically a libertarian gets elected president, right? Holy shit. Could you imagine the work they have in front of them with a Democrat and Republican led House, Senate?
But just look at, again, Javier Milei. Like, he's only been able to do so much because he still has to answer to the parliament.
So then in Argentina, point, nothing gets done because they'll put these bills on the table. It gets vetoed, and then that's that. And then
it's not a dictatorship, even if you like the dictator.
But that's the other thing. Like, oh man, I don't want to get this show running too long, but like, because we could do this forever. But Donald fucking Trump has some dictator qualities that are actually very scary.
Mm-hmm.
He really does. He really does. And one thing I'll point out is, and it happened 3 times now. There was an instance where somebody got pretty chippy at one of his events, was getting loud and, kind of making a scene, yelling and shit. And Trump was like, have that man arrested. Get him out of here. Right?
Was it arrested or just get him out of here?
Well, he had police take him out. So I don't know what happened from there, but get him out of here. Same thing happened to Obama. And I'm no Obama supporter. I'm never Democrat.
He's the guy who actually the president who actually killed Americans.
But like fucking that same thing happened to Obama. And Obama was like, no, man, let them talk. Let them speak their grievance. Let them do their thing. And the same thing happened to Vivek at one of his, conventions or rallies.
He brought him up front.
He brought that woman up front that was in tears and freaking out about being raped and having to carry a child and abortions and stuff like that. And they were getting ready to take her out. Vivek was like, no, let her in here.
They ended up hugging.
Yeah, like get her in here. Let her say what she needs to say. I get goosebumps, man. Look at my hair standing up right now. If you're going to be the leader of the so-called free world and you can't handle letting somebody say their piece, man, that's some real Hitler shit for real.
Again, I think with Trump, it's all arrogance and it's all ego. And anything that jeopardizes or that's all he is he's just an arrogant, windbag. But again, if you have the right person in his ear, I think he could be steered in a very positive direction. So I've got hope for that. I don't know. I've got one more topic that I would love to chat with you about, regarding the border in Texas and what's going on there. But we could set that aside for another episode.
Let's do it, because I feel some type of way about that, and I don't think it's what most people will think. So go for it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. So
Amy Coney Barrett,
the Supreme Court that actually sided with the fact that the federal government has jurisdiction over Texas border. And I think Greg Abbott made some, hot air comment about how no, Texas is going to be Texas. But that's an interesting play out, because I think his seat is in jeopardy, right? Because I think Texas is really fed up. I mean, they're getting thousands crossing the border. In the side conversation on that is also the whole idea of a lot of libertarians' position on open borders. And so this is really testing that position, right? Because if you're an open border libertarian,
it's a war between libertarians.
You're seeing it happen real time, and cities that are being drowned, like Chicago, New York, with immigrants. Like I'd love to have this conversation with Spike, because Spike is an open border guy, and I wonder, are you second guessing your position on open borders? Because that's what we have right now, and we're seeing it played out. But so that's a kind of a two-part, like, what's Texas going to do about it, and how might this change the libertarian viewpoint on open versus, I mean, I wouldn't say closed border, but like a border that is filtered.
You want to fix the border? Private property rights, period. You want to fix the border? Private property rights. That's where it starts. That's where it ends. If somebody owns that land, they can defend it however they see fit, right?
A lot of it's government land, though.
How can the government own anything?
But I think that's the thing, is I didn't even realize this about the UP, is that like 50% of it's owned by the federal government. It's all federal government, or a big chunk of it is a national park. I don't think people quite understand like how much land that the federal government claims to own within the states.
If the federal government owns land, that means you and I own it, because they don't have our money. No, realistically, that's how it is. And this is where
that's not how they view it.
This is my anarchist side coming out right now. Like, they can't own anything. Everything they have is because they take things from us. So that border belongs to us, right? The UP belongs to us. They don't own shit. They can't. How can they? Millet said it before. How can the government give you anything if they can't produce anything? Everything they have is based off theft and extortion, right? If somebody owns that property at the border, they can have security there that says, hey, man, you're not coming across here. Or if nobody owns it, well, I guess the borders are open, dude. Like, but private property rights,
or to say nobody owns it, but like if you're going to cross into it, you need to like claim ownership of it or pay for it. Like land should be, even vacant land should be open for sale. Then
I'm pro open borders. I'm actually an open border guy. What I am anti is supplying these people with housing and money when they come here. If you come here, you're on your own. That's how this goes, dude. We're not giving you fucking money. We're not giving you apartments. We're not doing any of that shit. If you want to come here, you pay your way.
I think we should go back to the sponsorship program, because that was how things were done in the past. If you're going to come over here as an immigrant, you need to have a sponsor who is going to plug you into a local community, to find you a job,
That's how they did it back in the day.
Right. Yeah, that's how I don't remember when that kind of ended, but like I
honestly have some really good friends that came here like that at church.
Yep, I did too.
I grew up with them. They were my neighbors when I was little.
I think that's a great way to bring in immigrants, but do it through an appropriate means. I think to become the federal government, there's a one of the shows I watch, I think it's Sailing La Vagabond, I think it's called. It's great YouTube channel. But anyhow, like every time they try to come in, they're Australian natively, but every time they try to dock or they come into American waters, like they talk about the exorbitant amount of paperwork and wait time it takes, where most other countries it's within 24 hours. In the United States it's weeks, and they're not even, they're just trying to dock their boat. And so they talk, I think on one of their shows they talked about, like, if you want actually wanted to immigrate into the United States, I think it's at minimum of $3,000 to get all the paperwork filed and all of, you know,
I mean, you
everything
gotta
done
have some money
correctly.
coming in, dude.
You've got to have a lawyer on retention. Like, it is insane how incredibly fraudulent, because again, these border securities, I mean, they're just all about making money. So they need to make it as difficult as possible because it ties everything up. So then they get more and more funding. And I mean, that's the same thing with homeless and every government agency. They need to actually make the problem worse so they continue to get more money. And so, but with immigration, like we should go back to, I mean, the what Staten Island, Liberty, like you come in, here's your name, here's your contact information, here's where you're staying, here's where the family that's supporting you or that's voluntary, we're going to verify that you've been sponsored, and boom, you're in. Like, it should be within 24 hours. If somebody shows up at our border and they've done their due diligence, we should be ushering them right in. But instead, either A, we're tying them up for months, if not years, with thousands of dollars, or we're ushering them in with no check.
Well, I think the whole thing where people are freaking out where the borders are open right now. The borders have never been fully open. It's selective open. Like the borders, it's never been open borders, dude. It's been selective on who they always want to let in. In the funny
The red states.
The funny thing is that people like you, people like me, your last name's DeJong, dude. You're not from here. Your family are a bunch of border jumpers just like mine, dude. My family came from Ireland, Italy, Germany, all those places. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are not, from here per se, because our family came here from other places. Immigration is a good thing. Immigrants built this country. The Chinese, the Irish, the Dagos. I mean, I can say Dago. I'm Italian. I'm Irish, Italian, whatever. But anyways.
But then again, that was back before welfare, free schooling, free free healthcare. Like, I mean, I've seen some reports. They're basically like giving these people plane tickets to
which is
X,
wrong.
and then they give them a check for like $5,000.
I'm against that 100%. You can come here, but you have to pay your way. That's where I stand on open borders. Okay. Because I'm not paying for your shit. You know what I'm saying? It's not my job. It's hard enough to live, and support my wife and myself and my dogs, my cat. And a fish too. I got all kinds of shit over here. I live in a zoo.
Animal sanctuary.
I know, right? I'm hoarding all kinds of people or four-legged peoples over here. But here's my thing about the border, and it's not just the border. It's abortion, it's healthcare, it's education, it's all across the board. They don't want to fix it. They need it in disarray because it curries votes one way or the other.
Well, between votes and funding, one or the other.
And it's a money. Exactly. It's all a money thing. They're never going to fix the border. They're never going to fix education. They're never
going to fix homelessness.
They're never going to fix it. Yeah, they're not fixing any of that stuff, because if they did, where's the problems?
Yep. Now I'm fired. I'm out of a job.
You know what I mean? Like, so there's nothing new under the sun, you guys.
What do you think is going to happen in Texas? Do you think, I mean, I'm sure Abbott's probably bought and paid for and he'll fold, but I kind of wonder, like, the fact that this is so public and the fact that I think that will be such an outrage in Texans. I mean, his political career will be done if he folds. And I wonder, like, does he weigh that?
I think regardless of what he does, if he tells them no, the federal government's just going to go there with their goons and do what they need to do. And if Texas thinks they're going to secede, I can prove that way wrong, because just a couple years ago when they got all that ice storm and shit like that, they were begging for the US government to help them out. They lost all that power and all that shit. They were begging for Big Daddy government's help. They're not ready to secede.
There's definitely a secession movement within Texas. I mean, I see
Of
that on
course.
Twitter quite a bit. And I think if Abbott does fold, that's going to give that secession movement, like, I mean, it's going to
Well,
drive
he'll be
it.
done there. His time in Texas will be over, but he'll just move into an upper office somewhere with the federal.
Potentially. I just wonder if enough Texans would be like, fuck this. You know, our Republican governor folded when we were being invaded, and the federal government is
The Republican
sending
fucking
out the invitations.
the Republican Supreme Court ruled on it, dude. So I mean, don't tell me these Republicans and Democrats are any different. I'm tired of hearing that shit too.
Well, I'm talking about like the citizens of the state of Texas.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I mean, they've explored this before, and I think the votes have never been big enough to even start the conversation. But I mean, again, if you've got an invasion, you've got a government who kowtows to the feds, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got a swarm of border security from the federal government coming in to take back over the border so they can open it all back up. If I'm in Texas, I'm pissed as, you know, as all get out. Does that not just really dump fire on the secession movement and make that more people look at it as a viable alternative? I mean, you've got, especially if inflation can, I mean, I think this is the second month in a row inflation's continued to tick higher. And then they're talking about rate cuts and more bailouts coming up very soon, because the federal government's I mean, their debt's rolling over to a new higher interest rate. So and you get an election. So you've got, you know, the Fed is going to cut rates and start printing, which is going to just drive inflation up.
They might not cut rates, so they might not be able to. I just saw something about this.
They're going to have to, just because of the federal government borrowing. Like, because the federal government can always pass a law that says, I mean, if they wanted to pass a law that says that their borrowing from the Fed is at 0%, regardless of what everybody else's interest rate is, they could pass that law. But they would have to pass a law to change the thing. But I'm just thinking like kind of a convergence, right? Like, if I'm in Texas and all of a sudden inflation's ticking up, it's now at 5%, now it's 6%. Now I've got, you know, thousands of immigrants coming over the border, and now I can't even, like, you know, they're taking over the schools, right, just to live. So my kids can't even go to school, and my taxes are going up, and inflation's going up, and like, that could be kind of that tsunami that really pushes that whole secession movement over the edge.
Well, I mean, hey, look, I've said it 1,000 times. If any state were to secede from the federal government, that would give me a rock hard boner. I swear to God, it would. Like, not to be weird or anything like that, but I would. That would give me a hard dick, man.
I'll play swords with you. That's awesome.
No homo, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that would be amazing. I don't think they're ready. They don't have the infrastructure for it. That improved it a couple years ago when they couldn't handle the ice storm. If Abbott said, hey, man, no, this is my state, we're not going to do this shit, I feel like the federal government will be like, well, we own that land, so you can't tell us what to fucking do, and we're going to send military down there to, you know, deal with your shit. And then at that point, it's over, because they don't have enough guns to deal with military. Per se.
Well, I think they probably do, but it's not in, it's in citizens' hands. It's not in militia hands, because they would need to, you know, whether it's the state, you know, or I don't know if they have a big militia presence. I would assume so. I mean, Michigan does. So
Michigan has the biggest militia in the United States. It's not even close. I got a couple friends. We talk.
I'd be interesting to see how how much that's infiltrated by feds. But again, another podcast.
Oh shit, dude! Defense have infiltrated the Libertarian Party, and I'm sick of not saying it. I'm done. I'm tired of not talking about that. But that's a different podcast too.
I can attest to it because I know that there's been individuals who I have onboarded to the party that I was like, "You're a Fed." I smell it over Zoom, so I definitely know it's happening.
Right, but man, let's close this out. You got anything to say before we go?
I don't. So I had a podcast going, the State 180. I know a lot of your listeners are probably familiar with that. I am now buried within duties within the Libertarian Party, so I've not been podcasting. So these type of like conversations, I am all about. I miss this beyond belief. I think our discussions are always gold.
We always
maybe I might be biased because but I'll lean heavily on you if you need guests. I'm always going to be available because I love these conversations. I'm just I'm getting kind of I've reached my limits on the things that I need to do and as opposed to want to do. So if you're in Michigan, if you're listening, if you'd like to be a part of the Libertarian Party, please reach out to me. Ben.DeJong, D-E-J, yes, it's a J, D-E-J-O-N-G at me.com. I am, all right, let's see if I can list them all off. I am chair of the Libertarian affiliate in the capital area, which is Lansing. I am the director of communications for the state party. I am a board member representing District 3 on the executive committee of the state party. I am on the planning commission for our conventions for the state party. So we've got a convention coming up soon. I will be announcing that on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, etc. Coming up soon. So love to hear and see people there to come up and say hi. I'm also on a research and the communication department within the national party. So I've got a lot of responsibilities. That's 5 positions, and I thoroughly enjoy all of them. And I do think, I think we talk a lot about, black pill topics because they're justified, right? That we're seeing it, we're living it, we are experiencing it, and we're seeing them coming down the pike. I mean, things are going to get worse. My hope, my white pill is you can make an impact locally. You can be a part of local change. And I am a big fan of giving the system a middle finger. So if you can make an impact in your local community, your local village, city, state, township, whatever it may be, and if you can drive the middle finger to say, fuck you, Lansing, to Governor Whitmer, you can say, fuck you to DC, whoever may be in the seat of powers. That's my hope, is to get enough people to say no. And it's time we need to be renegades again, and we need to realize the Empire's evil.
That's right. Hell yeah, Rage Against the Machine, Evil Empire. I remember buying that on cassette. That's how old I am. Anyways, man, thank you so much for your time. You guys, I love you. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take care of your families. Take care of your investments, man. Don't be caught with your pants down when shit hits.
Amen.
I do this out of love. I really want you guys to protect yourselves. And until next time, peace, love, and liberty. Be good.